Australia in the 70s took the larrikin image to violent extremes.
Sharpie!
Including our own native youth culture, the Sharpies. This was the sort of crowd musicians of the time might have to entertain. Some tried explosives, some tried school uniforms, some tried makeup. Whatever it took, as bands did battle in every pub and living room across the nation.
I think you kind of look back on it like, I imagine, if we'd gone to war. And there's like 4 or 5 years where, you know, as a bunch of mates, you go out there and you do these extraordinary things that are you're probably never going to repeat again in your whole life.
You see these guys in the World War I, they get those trenches. You know, it's a bit like that. You know, you pick up the guitar and you just dig in.
The only thing that we don't really have, or don't have enough of, is kind of our own Anzac days, where we can get together as old diggers and kind of recount war stories.
People start to scream! Big men lying on the ground.
The new wave of Australian hard rock started deep behind the walls of an unassuming concrete bunker in the Sydney suburb of Burwood. Holed up inside were 3 Scottish brothers. George Young from the 60s Easy Beats and his little brothers, Malcolm and Angus, were beating out a rhythm that would soon flake the nation's fibro houses. 14-year-old Angus was so eager to get into the guitar, he would never change out of his school uniform.
A lot of it was nerves at first. When I started in the band, I was pretty much shy. It was hard to get me to sort of push myself forward, you know. But Malcolm and George always sort of said, no, get up the front and show people that you can play. And I think when I put on the school suit, I thought I had to be extrovert.
You're having trouble with your high school head. He's giving you the blues.
They chose the name AC/DC from a sign on their sister Margaret's sewing machine. She was responsible for the band's wardrobe. But even though they started with a confused and colourful look, there was nothing ambiguous about AC/DC's sonic armoury.
3, 6, 2, 4, 3, 6, 8. I hear life and crime. Baby!
We all knew we could play, so I think that helped us. I mean, we could busk our way through blues, jazz. We could get there. I even think Malcolm played Zorba the Greek one night, so, yeah. And I followed.
The young brothers began playing at a time recognised as the Australian music scene's lowest ebb. Outdoor festivals like Sunbury were all but finished. But pubs and RSL clubs all over the country were opening their doors to the blues bands that had thrived in the elements. Here there was plenty of heat, no mud, and unlimited supplies of beer. Just the environment for a new generation of angry young men to work up a fine mist of sweat with a frontal assault of volume and an enthusiasm to join the fray. One of them was actually called Angry.
I was a band mole. I mean, I used to hang around gigs, and because in those days, the late 60s, early 70s, the bands like Thorpe and all those bands, the Coloured Balls and Chain and all the bands that I adored and worshipped, you'd want to get close. You'd want some of it to rub off because you had this feeling in your sack that, well, that's me. So you'd hang around outside until they arrived from their other gig. You say, give your hand. They go, yeah, sweet, grab that, you know, and you'd, with your little boxes and stuff, and you'd go in there and throw it all on the stage, and they go, no, sweet, you're staying here, you know, like, get the band ears, $5, get the band some drinks, you know, and all of a sudden you're in, you're one of them.
It happened in the suburbs north of the river, where the smokestacks rape the air.
crowd they played to was male, volatile and working class. They demanded to be deafened by bass, drums and guitar. It became known as pub rock, music to drink by.
You didn't have to sort of be, you know, socially acceptable because you were all part of this fantastic, seething, sort of heaving mass.
I used to say a thing on stage was, I know you're out there because I can smell you, because the stench of sweat and beer and cigarettes were just like, just when you came on stage would just whack you.
I didn't want to give anyone the chance to sort of, you know, take a beer glass and take aim, so I thought just keep moving. And from that point, you know, I suppose people started to like it.
The venues that make up the Roll of Honour in the Great Campaign became part of hard rock's own heroic mythology. Melbourne's White Horse Inn, Sydney's Bondi Lifesaver and Adelaide's Largs Pier Hotel. Where another young recruit, Jimmy Barnes, began his journey from fighting and drinking to screaming the blues.
I used to go there when I lived in Elizabeth when I was a bit younger. We'd take acid and go there and watch the bouncers kill people, you know, just for entertainment. It was like frightening. These guys, it was a really rough pub. You know, for, all the Sydney bands used to play there. I remember seeing Lobby Lloyd and Billy Thorpe. This place was just outrageous. I mean, you know, like everybody had jugs of like bourbon and coke. That was the chicks. They'd have strippers every night. It was like a real full-on bar. It was like Wild West Town, and that's where we started. We started drawing crowds there. And the ones that made it through the night without getting killed and came back the next night, you know, and brought their mates for protection.
But not every band had a sense of rhythm strong enough to jerk the drinkers out of their stupor. Hush played the same gigs in tight, shiny outfits that might have looked better on girls.
I won't like you, but I love you. Seems that I'm always thinking of you. You treat me badly. I love you badly. You really got a hold of me. You really got a hold of me.
The bands playing around Sydney were playing pubs. They were kind of jeans and t-shirts. They'd have their backs to the audience, and it was kind of blues bandy type things. Fantastic musicians, great musicians, but everyone took themselves really, really seriously.
You do me wrong now.
We were never very good musicians, and for we garage musicians, we had to have some sort of outlet.
We welcome the loudest, roughest, toughest rock and roll band in Australia.
We had an angle because of the Chinese thing. We could have either giant sort of red flags and red stars and all that kind of stuff, or the big fire-breathing dragons, things that kind of made us appear as though we were like Kiss, although we predated Kiss.
With do-it-yourself pyrotechnics, Hush showed that bands in glam gear could hold an audience down the pub. Getting the new tribes on side was more than a challenge. Part-time musician Greg McCainch decided to make a student film about the toughest crowd of all, Melbourne's Sharpies. He seemed to learn nothing from the exercise and took his new glam band right into the lion's den.
Everyone's wearing makeup and I was wearing some hideous lurex sort of jumpsuit, and we thought we were definitely going to get not get out of there alive, surrounded by Sharpies, but you know, we sort of won them over.
This was a weird new Australia. Plenty of glitter, an ex-surfy singer named Shirley, a cross-dressing, cranky guitarist, and a weird name, Skyhooks.
They either liked them, hated them, wanted to beat them up, called them poofters, whatever it was, everyone reacted to that band.
But it was their attitude that had the biggest impact. They took nothing seriously, including themselves.
Whatever happened to the revolution? Whatever happened to the revolution?
Skyhooks in some ways was a reaction to the blues boogie bands, not just in the music but in the look of the group too. It was the end of the Vietnam era. There was a mood in the country that people were looking for the new. And I think somehow we kind of delivered that.
Like I said, don't experiment too much. You should have your parts set by now. Just stick to them and try to keep it like you very first started off, nice and enthusiastic.
Greg McCain's lyrics were unashamedly about local life.
They pulled it off, like, magnificently. All that stuff, you know, bought his first dope at the South Yarra Arms. Carlton, do the Lygon Street Limbo, you know, and all these stories attached to each area.
When the sun sets over,
I was very impressed by people like Chuck Berry, who could say, you know, Memphis, Tennessee, and it would conjure up such powerful sort of images. So I tried to see if there were any places in my experience, you know, where I lived that kind of had that kind of charisma or ring to them. And, you know, Wagga really didn't do it for me, with all due regard to Wagga.
They made Australians feel, you know, positive about writing about our country, what's going on here, the frustrations, and really whatever happened to the revolution. We all got stoned and it drifted away.
They soon became theme songs for an entire generation. Glam rock may have made a raid on the pub rock circuit, but it couldn't seize the ground from the hard rock army. Luckily, another front was opening.
baby, you're the first to know.
A new television show that completely changed the way Australians thought about music was recruiting talent.
None of us have ever played with colour before, and it is a game now. There are no ground rules for this show. We're breaking them all, every one of them, in every show.
An artist will now have to seriously consider and plan as part of his stage wardrobe and his television wardrobe, because it's amazing how much difference it is going to make to the performance.
We do a little
Made by a group of ABC producers with theatrical leanings, its public face was a former music journalist, record producer and eternal party animal, Ian Molly Meldrum, Countdown's #1 spruiker.
What is Countdown? Well, Countdown is the most exciting visual presentation of the top 40 hits you'll ever see on colour television. From Alice Cooper to Sherbet, we've got them, and you'll see them on Countdown.
To have then people all ready to go, like Skyhooks, John Paul Young, Sherbet, AC/DC, was just so exciting.
Oh, we're on the first show, aren't we? Well, the first show will be a killer dilly, you know, like, we'll either make it or break it for you, mate, you know.
John, can I just have one comment, please, regarding...
I'm terribly sorry. Look,
last night's
I'm sorry. I would, but look, I've got to get home to watch Countdown.
Skyhooks was the first band to take full advantage of what colour TV was all about. Commercial radio took offence to the lyrics of their debut album, Living in the 70s, and banned 6 tracks from airplay.
Half the people in my office were like, oh, we're sunk, we're finished, this is the end, what are we going to do? And I was laughing, and they said, look, what are you laughing about? I said, you've got to be kidding, this is a bonus. They can't go and listen to our songs for free on the radio, they're going to have to buy them.
If anything was a picture of how things all melded together, it was in fact Skyhooks, because there it was. I mean, this is all changing, you know what I mean? Makeup, the makeup on a man was almost abhorrent.
As they said, everybody was wearing blue jeans except them. So you put them in front of a colour television with the makeup and the bizarre looks and the theatrics and the outfits, and it was just absolutely mind-blowing.
Skyhooks went on to sell nearly 250,000 copies of Living in the 70s. Countdown could claim a lot of the credit.
You didn't have to rely on radio solely. You could do a Countdown show, and next week, if your song was good, you'd see the sales, and that people, whether they lived in Gove or Catherine or Broome, you could get into everybody's lounge room, and it was really part of life, sitting down on a Sunday night, and whether you liked the bands or you didn't, your big sister would like one and your other brother would hate this one, and it was just a talking point of the week.
Countdown's growing stable of acts and a healthy live circuit had re-energised the local music scene. The two musical factions, hard pub rock and TV glam, were both thirsty for tunes and lyrics. Australia's most successful songwriting duo were ready to provide. When former Easy Beats Harry Vanda and George Young came back from Britain in the early 70s, packed in their suitcases was a huge stash of unreleased songs.
We were in the wilderness, just writing songs. We never forgot them, you see. We put them down. So we had a bank. We had a lot of songs in the bank, hundreds.
You see so many people around, good songwriters, groups, singers that have a lot of talent but never get the chance to get somewhere. We just like to give them this chance.
I got talent.
Yeah, no.
Can you sign me up?
We sang.
Under the wing of their former publisher Ted Albert, Vanda and Young reinvented themselves as producers for bands and singers who could carry their tunes. To begin with, they took their old singer Stevie Wright to the top of the charts with a 14-minute epic called Evie.
Let your hang down. Evil, let your hang down. Evil, let your hang down. Let your hang down.
Then they really hit the target with a song for Scottish-born John Paul Young.
I was one of the first names they called in, and Yesterday's Hero was one of the first tracks I put down.
Here is the news. The police spokesman said today that the management of rock and roll
tonight during his concert. The spokesman for the singer said he had suffered a nervous collapse. The singer himself
hospital was besieged by hundreds of troops. Latest, just here he is. Listen, take a look at me and yesterday's hero. Yesterday's hero. That's all I be. Take a look at me and yesterday's hero. And yesterday's hero is all that I'm gonna be if I don't get together. Make a new start and be somebody better. All that I'll be if I don't get together now.
It was ironic. Yesterday's Hero, a song about the Easy Beats' own struggle with fame, had created a new star.
I'd basically walk in and they'd sort of look at me and write a song in front of me and then give it to me and I'd go and sing it.
We were very zoomed into anything that, like that's radio friendly, obviously, because that's our training,
I was witnessing the tail end of probably 6 or 8 months of, agonising over bits of songs or whatever, and I wasn't seeing that. I was just seeing the final flourish, and it looked so easy to me.
But their biggest success was happening right underneath them. The pub circuit was now reverberating to AC/DC's twin guitar assault. All they needed was a singer to match the sound. There were 3 main contenders: William Shakespeare, John Paul Young, and yet another Scottish expat, a wild Highland piper. At 28, Bon Scott was already well hardened by the full kit of rock and roll habits. He'd sung everything from bubblegum to progressive rock, done time in jail, been a postman and a landscape gardener.
He had lined up a couple of bottles of bourbon, somebody had given him some dope or something, yeah. And there was that, and somebody had put out some speed somewhere, and he downed these bottles of bourbon, you know. And I said to Malcolm, I said, geez, if this guy can walk, let alone sing, it's going to be something, yeah. But he got on, you know, and I think from the moment he got on stage, he was just, just one of those people that had that presence, you know. And you certainly felt it, especially within the band. It certainly felt, you know, complete.
Whether fronting the Bondi Lifesaver, a countdown audience, or a gay night at Melbourne's Hard Rock Cafe, Bon Scott and AC/DC always put on an unforgettable show.
The gay crowd actually loved them. Bon used to get up there with a whip and do the whole number, and so there was that, to playing gigs at places like Festival Hall where there'd be screaming girls on that. I mean, you know, trying to virtually rip them off stage.
AC/DC gave the crowds what they wanted when they literally struck a blow for local music. They started an all-in brawl with English headliners Deep Purple at the last Sunbury in 1975.
Somebody said somebody threw a punch at our manager, one of Deep Purple's tour guys, you know. So that was it. Bon was sort of being, he had someone in there, like a headlock, and this guy was sort of spinning him in the air, and Bon's yelling out to us, "Don't worry, guys, I got him." And I got on the microphone. I said to the kids at the front, because they started coming over the fence, I says, "Hey, we need a bit of hand up here." We never got to play in the end, but the next day, that was all that you read about, was AC/DC in brawl with Deep Purple. So in the end, actually it elevated us.
Ted Albert was impressed. After a gentle push from Vander and Young, he signed AC/DC to his Albert's label. Their second single, High Voltage, fixed the band's sound and its name in its chord sequence.
George, we felt that it'd be cool if we had a song that had the chords AC/DC in it. So what we done was, you got C and you got D, and C, so we more or less threw them together, and I had a little chant, this high voltage thing that I was singing, which Phil, the drummer, he felt was rather corny, but paid the rent. Yeah. Well, this is it anyhow. That's A. On the guitar, you got high voltage, and you got C, and you got high voltage for AC/DC, so you got the chords into the song. So that was the idea behind the high voltage.
When we became aware of the rock, you know, like the guys with AC/DC, for instance, you know, who did their thing, and Rose Tattoo, the Angels, all those sort of guys. Now they really cut their teeth on a, you know, like on an audience that demanded blood. And that's the only way to describe it, blood or else, you know. And they were ready to give it. And that was when an Australian sound was born, in my opinion, you know. It was that was the Australian pub sound. And we loved it, you know. It was like, we didn't want to sterilize it, we didn't want to, you know, this ties it and that tie. I mean, you know, not like the American sort of smooth and creamy sort of, you know, nicey sort of. This, just there on rattles, big bloody deal. You know what I mean? It's the real thing. What we were looking for was to try and get that energy and that danger that you got on the stage in a pub. You know, like with that audience, and and sort of see that, you know, like these people really interact. We tried to sort of put that on tape. Whether we succeeded, I don't know, but we had a good try.
Throughout the network of ABC television on 146 stations across Australia, this is...
Countdown was the showcase for Australian music in the 70s. It put the pop dandies and the beer blasters into living rooms across the country. Record sales went skywards and Molly Meldrum became a pop guru.
Molly!
Molly!
Where are we? Where are we? Oh, here we are.
And it sort of became a big party. Well, it certainly did for me, I can tell you, you know.
He's got the best ear in the business. He can hear something and just go, wow, that's a #1 record. That's what you wanted from him. You wanted his blessing. You wanted to play him stuff and hope that he turned around and say, wow, guys, that's fantastic. That's great. That's a hit. It's going to be huge. And once that happened, you think, whew, it's a lay down misère. We'll go home and it'll all be great.
Molly getting the kids to drag me down off the stage, you know, I don't think things like that hurt. You know, the kids would tune into Countdown hoping to see something happening, you know, like we used to with the Speedway, and hoping to see an accident, you know.
A left hook, come on. Tonight, this is it, the heavyweight champion. Sherbet, you've got the gun!
Countdown's recipe was also simple. Inject groups of attractively bare-chested young males into a crowd of young, adoring females and stir. Sherbet had the mix down pat. Plenty of tight satin and hairy torsos, but their real appeal was in their seriously catchy songs. Cockney Clive Shakespeare and ladies' favourite Garth Porter wrote their hits.
I love songwriting. I'd love to just be able to relax and write songs and play them to an audience about the inner emotions that we go through, that everyone goes through.
Look at me, I can dance, I can sing. Let me make like a bell, let me ring. A bell.
Every day that comes up, you have a different feeling about, or you feel a different way, or you're aware of a different emotion within yourself. And it sort of creates an idea for a song.
Sherbet was the first Australian band to sell $1 million worth of records. A handsome return for all that Countdown exposure.
I'll be there with you when you bring your love to me. Let your love come easy and free. Yeah, listen. Summer love is like no other love. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Summer love is like no other love. Summer love is like no other love.
While Sherbet was seducing teenage Australia, Vanda and Young had their own eye on rock and roll's treasure. Their range and versatility seemed limitless.
Some of the acts that we actually did at Albert's was, of course, AC/DC, The Angels, Rose Tattoo, John Paul Young, Stevie Wright. And no offense to anyone I haven't mentioned.
Jump in my car. I wanna take you home.
Go, pal, the desk is right behind you. The old desk that we all recorded on is right over here.
think what really drew people to Elvis, especially in the 70s, was that realization of sort of being part of a club almost, you know.
It's probably as close as you could get to Motown in America, really.
I guess it was. It was very family.
I mean, Elvis was a special thing in those days. Very much right on the cutting edge of things.
The growing Albert's family studio was the nearest thing Australia ever had to a hit factory, pumping out product from right across the pop and rock spectrum.
Love is in the air when the day is nearly done. And I don't know if you're an illusion, don't know if I see it true, but you're something that I must believe in, and you're there when I reach out for you. Love is in the air everywhere I look around. Love is in the air, every sight and every sound. And I don't know if I'm being foolish, don't know if I'm being wise, but it's something that I must believe in, and it's there when I look in your eyes.
George had either put a guide vocal down himself, or it would be at me, you know, because I'd hit the wrong note, Billy Goat. These were not wrong notes, as in not musical. These were notes that would fit, but they weren't what he wanted to hear. So, you know, you'd had to do it the way that they wanted it done, you know. And there was a very good reason for it. It was always the best way.
Youthful energy and hands-on experience came together for Albert's when Harry Vander and George Young took AC/DC's live sound into the studio.
What we were looking for was to try and get that energy and that danger that you got on the stage in a pub. We tried to sort of put that on tape. You had to get them at the right time. You had to, when they were really fired up, to try and create that psychology, you know, so that they would go out there and...
George gave us free scope to be raw, and used to let us, you know, when we got in the studio, used to let us just go for it, more or less.
You'd see Angus doing a solo, climbing all over his Marshall cabinets in a studio, just, you know, like he was on stage, you know.
We had big slagging sessions, everybody got a surf. It's like, I mean, especially Angus once he gets on his soapbox, you know. It's like...
AC/DC songs often came out of jam sessions, including their national rock anthem, It's a Long Way to the Top.
You had this... And then I put this bit of colour over the top, which was this little lick thing. Up with the lyrical idea, the riding down the highway. I'm not gonna sing, but
Riding down the highway, going to a show, stopping on the byways, playing rock and roll, getting robbed, getting stoned, getting beat up, broken bones, getting had, getting took. I tell you folks, it's harder than it looks. It's a long way to the top if you wanna rock and roll. It's a long way to the top if you wanna rock and roll. If you think it's easy doing one-night stands, try playing in a rock roll band. It's a long way to the top if you wanna rock and roll.
George was sort of sitting there going, it'd be really good if maybe we'd something a bit different, you know, and you know, for the solo thing.
off. He just said, you know, there's a big break in there. Can you play bagpipes? Why he thought of bagpipes, I'll never know. You know? And I sort of played a bit of recorder before in fraternity and other bands, you know. And I sort of knew how to blow and finger, you know, so I just... What else could you say?
He never played them before in his life, you know. He gets in the studio and George said, I thought you told us you could play. He said, no, I told you I was in a Highland bagpipe band. I played drums.
Australian rock had come to a crossroads. The Alberts family and Countdown were feeding each other. One made the music, the other put it on TV.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
This can only happen on Countdown.
But the fans wanted to see their heroes in the flesh.
I think you kind of look back on it like, I imagine if we'd gone to war. And there's like 4 or 5 years where, you know, as a bunch of mates, you go out there and you do these extraordinary things that are you know, you're probably never going to repeat again in your whole life.
You get into the truck and it's exactly the same as when you got out of it. My face think I'm crazy. A lot of people think we're all crazy.
There's a gypsy kind of spirit, I think, that being in the music business has no rules and you don't know where you're going to go.
Morning, Hush, your breakfast?
Thanks, mate. There was the odd stabbings and most nights there'd be blood.
It's normally, what the fuck am I doing here? That kind of thing.
Well, after about 2.5 months, you start to go numb.
Just do as you're told.
As more and more hotels converted to music venues, a lot of diggers lost their place at the bar.
Young man, dedicated to efficiency. 17, 28, 59. Looks like it's coming down on me. Down on me, down on me.
The pub rock circuit was barely controlled Friday night rebellion. No pub band was complete without its own exorcist out front, goading the audience.
Rock and roll purists, if you like, they're part shaman, and they really are, in the true sense of the word. It's like, you know, like, it's almost like you're born to it.
I would always threaten the audience with going even further, and we were doing Looks Like It's Coming Down on Me. And then during the solo, I started throwing the fish at the audience, and they started throwing it back.
Pub audiences were also becoming creative themselves. Whenever Doc Neeson sang the words of the Angels' classic love song, Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again, back came the ingenious response, No way, get fucked, fuck off.
Am I ever gonna see your face again?
In the heat of the battle, musicians drew heavily on rock and roll's road fuel, alcohol, and whatever else it took to forget.
You know, we had a full head of steam up by that time because, you know, by the time you got to the stage, you'd had a couple of lines of speed. You'd already lived 3 or 4 movies, horror movies, in the preparationals. So the rest of it was just somewhere else to go up.
The hardships of the Australian road would complete AC/DC's training. Bon Scott revelled in the lifestyle. Somehow he rose above all the substance abuse to become the ultimate rock and roll frontman.
You could see it in people's faces because he had that sort of focus. I mean, he could be in the back of a club and you could just walk in the door and you would go, there he is, you know, because there'd be a wall of people. He had that aura about him.
While confirmed milk drinker Angus Young knew exactly what a beer-soaked brain could appreciate.
I think the biggest joy for us used to be when we would go out and play shows with a lot of bands, to watch them be nervous. You know, that was the big kick we got, you know. Even if we only got to play 30 minutes, you know, It was just the feeling of watching a lot of people sort of go, what's going on here?
Fans in small country towns were not always respectful of Countdown's pretty boy icons.
We'd be warned off by local sheriffs, you know, to make sure that we went nowhere near the white girls, that kind of thing. So that was kind of fun. I think we were shot at once.
On tours, you get to a point where you get that loneliness feeling, like the type of thing where you're locked up in the motel room. And the thing is that you've got to stay in the room, and if you go into town, you come under all sort of, not heavy vibes, but sort of that, what would you call it, people yelling at you.
I used to frighten Daryl, Braithwaite, every now and again. I'd get up the back of the bus and let the top off a can early in the morning, and just to watch the look on his face.
For protection from all forms of danger, including themselves, every band had to take at least 3 vigilant roadies with them on tour.
Most roadies, where they fall down is that they want to be a pop star and they don't realise they're there to work.
Yeah, roadies want to be stars, and they're also the ones who, in trying to be a star so hard, are the ones who are often the ones who chuck television sets out the window.
Yeah, it's all their fault if we get a bad name.
And,
what?
It's true.
When have I ever checked the TV out the window? Oh, come on.
Come on.
They were very, very dangerous times. There were times where the pyrotechnics would literally blow outwards, you know, with shrapnel and all sorts of stuff, instead of blowing upwards. I started playing guitar, and the guitar sounded kind of funny, so I turned around to try and fix it up. And this flashpoint blew up, and I kind of looked down, and my shirt was on fire, I was on fire, and nearly fainted. And this was our road crew, had no knowledge whatsoever of pyrotechnics or gunpowder or anything, you know.
If there was one band that took the hard-living road warrior ethic to its logical extreme, it was Adelaide's Cold Chisel. Not only did they attack their audiences, they fought amongst each other.
Yeah, Don Walker, who's grew up in, like, you know, Ray Charles, Thelonious Monk, Ian, you know, he's really clever, he's just really soulful, and he just plays. It's a gift from God. It comes straight from, you know, that and his knob. You got me, I was like 14 years old, who wanted to sing, you know, scream like Little Richard. Steve, who was a bloody thick-headed Scouse Gate, you know, drummer from Liverpool. He's trying to do things really precise, and he's trying to do things really, you know, sweet, and I just want to do things raw and fucking hammer them, and him and I were literally like this the whole time.
Left my heart to the sappers round casing.
If AC/DC set down a solid Australian sound, Cold Chisel songwriter Don Walker found an authentic local voice.
Vietnam, cold turkey.
His lyrics were like bush ballads snuck in the back door of the bar.
He's the social voyeur, I guess. He'll pick an image which will sum up the whole vibe, as opposed to literally saying, this is fucked, this is fucked, this is fucked. He'll sort of say, oh, this is great, but by the way, this is happening, you know? And, you know, and it's sort of, which is the way life is, you know? All this fuck stuff goes on around you without you even knowing it until you suddenly realize, you know, he's sort of like that. He sees what's messing up before it sort of becomes the bleeding obvious.
You know the last plane
Like so many other bands who'd conquered home territory, AC/DC were ready for the foreign charge. Australian as their music was, the Young brothers and Bon Scott weren't limited by the local appeal of their lyrics.
The concept of them failing to achieve worldwide success just didn't exist. There was just something about that group that, I just knew it was going to happen.
Welcome to London. This is Doug Crawford here for Countdown. And look, your mob are over here. AC/DC, the lads themselves, chatting away in a corner here at Covent Garden. I'm going to get Angus and Bon to tell me about your tour over here. What have you blokes been doing? Can I get you to come down and have a look at our most attractive part of town?
I thought this was it.
Well, how's the trip been going, though? Because we get so many good bands over here.
It's been excellent. All the gigs we've done have been, received better than we expected. And some of them, at least more than half have been incredible, At least back home,
But the thing about British audiences is they go along, they see the Rolling Stones 1 second, the Beatles the next. They're broken up.
We're better. Yeah. So the people that come to see us, we just give them the show we give the Australian people, because... And they took on to us without publicity, The publicity caught up to us, not us to them.
Are you rich, though? I mean, are you making the bread?
Yep. Sure are.
I just bought Big Ben.
A few Poms learn to pay people, we get rich real quick.
Next on the show from London is a group who knows all about the land of Oz. And believe me, England's fast learning about them. Need I say any more? AC/DC with Dog Eat Dog!
Well, it's a dog eat dog. It got to. So Frenchy frog.
Even when we first went there, all the early gigs, you got all the people like the Sex Pistols who hadn't formed, but the players, the Johnny Roltons and people, they would show up.
Sign your life away. Do you write your name in dust? Hey, and the dog has his day. It's a dog eat dog. Dog eat dog. Dog eat dog. Read the news. Someone win. Someone lose. Ups above and downs below, and limbo's in between. Up you win, down you lose. It's anybody's game. Hey, every dog has his day. It's a dog eating dog. Dog eating dog.
AC/DC didn't exactly leave a vacuum back home in Australia, more an opportunity. Jimmy Barnes was King Yobbo, the leader of an eager pack of new bands raging around the pub circuit.
Just a suburban boy. Angry with hanging around. All the boys in town. Singing down the highway.
It was musical therapy. The unruly crowds became feared the world over, as every night of the week thousands of venues shook to the national pastime.
I hate the youth, mate, for the stand out that we ain't gonna stand back anymore.
On one infamous night in March 1979, the hard rock revolution came close to the real thing. When fans put on a genuine riot to protest the close down of a classic pub rock venue, the Star Hotel, suburban warfare broke out in the streets of Newcastle.
The funniest thing, I still have people coming up to me saying, "We seen you there. We were there with you when that happened. We were there that night when you guys played on that last night." And we never fucking played there at all. Never even went there. I went there once for a drink because I wanted to go see it. I remember the bar, they had these. They used to, if you wanted to dance, you danced on the bar, and the band played behind where the drinks are served. It was a great little pub.
For once, rock and roll boozers stopped throwing beer at the band.
That was the first time that it erupted into violence on the street, where people were prepared, so pissed off. They weren't sure what it was about, but they were so pissed off about just the overall gloom of the situation in the country that it erupted into violence. And it was, I think it was something that freaked a lot of Australians out, freaked a lot politically but business-wise and locally. And I know as an observer, Don Walker was really touched by it. The fact that that this was like the Australians who are like, oh, I should be right, mate, were actually turning to burning police cars and out of frustration.
It had become far too rough, tough and tawdry for those in the platform shoes. As rock took a harder turn and audiences followed, the glam acts began to lose their place and relevance.
It was only when we took ourselves seriously that the band started to the wheels started falling off.
Some retired to more suited professions, writing advertising jingles and the challenge of light entertainment television. In 1979, AC/DC made a successful foray across the Pacific. They were taking America in the same way they had taken the UK, live. Strong album sales followed.
32-1. I see over there, it's pretty laid back, And a band comes along that rocks its ass off, man, and you're right in there, and they just love you.
It seemed there was no limit to how far the Albert success story might go. But on Monday, the 18th of February 1980, Bon Scott left the party.
Hang on, a voice from heaven says, yes.
A voice from heaven? Right. Now, what about an album?
It would have surprised me if he'd, lived on. To be honest, it just didn't seem to, old age and Bon just, it was hard to imagine.
Police believe that Bon Scott had been drinking with the friends and had been left in the car to sleep off the effects of the alcohol.
Probably to the band, we never even thought that we would even keep going. Losing someone like that, and then for him to have come so far, and it was the first time in his life that he had, he'd actually felt he was accomplishing something. He got to be who he wanted to be, so...
There could be no greater epitaph for Australian hard rock success than AC/DC's Machine Rhythm, Angus Young's Berserk warrior guitar, and Bon's blood-curdling battle cry. Lest we forget.
Back in 1955, man didn't know about a rock and roll show. No, that jive. The white man had the schmaltz, the black man had the blues. No one knew what they was going to do, but Tchaikovsky had the news. He said, let there be sound. There was sound. Let there be light. There was light. Let there be drums. There was drums. Let there be guitar. There was guitar. Oh, let there be rock. The rock and roll was born. Now across the land, every rockin' band was blowing up a storm. And the guitar man got famous, the business man got rich, and in every bar there was a superstar.
suppose Malcolm, he was the one that he said they need, you know, he had putting together a band and he wanted another instrument, you know? And he asked me, and I thought, you know, I was shocked that he asked me. I thought I'd be the last one he'd ask, you know? And so he said, well, you know, we need another instrument, better, you know, a guitar, you know, and someone who knows, you know, knows guitar. So I think it probably because he probably thought it was, you know, easier just getting me there. In the house, you know, there was always a guitar, you know, some in bits, you know, because I had other brothers that sort of used them as weapons, and some in, you know, put-togethers, you know, and then they were just lying about in the house. So, you know, you sort of, you fiddled about with them, you know. And then I think I had another older brothers, because they had all different forms of music, you know. So I had one brother, Alex, I mean, he was, saxophone was his main instrument. And, I mean, he used to send us all deaf with his scales, you know. If you've ever heard a saxophone in a room, you know, this guy practicing, you know. And so you had him doing that and clarinet, and then he started getting into other things like piano and that, but saxophone and clarinet were his main things. Another brother, Stevie, that loved the piano, accordions, and George, you know, you could put George, he could busk his way up through a bit of piano, you know, guitars, you know, because he played rhythm guitar and easy beats for years. And all of the males in my family were all players, which was kind of strange, I suppose, because my mother and father never played an instrument. So I was always the worst. I could never sit down with a record and copy it, you know. You know, Malcolm had a bit better ear for, you know, sitting and analysing something or dissecting it, you know. And I just used to go, oh, he'll pick him up. And I'll just look and whip it off him. Yeah, still the same way, I think. Yeah. First time we met Bon, there was a guy called Vince Lovegrove, and he was doing an agency in Adelaide. And we were coming in to do gigs in and around Adelaide, and I think we were playing with Lou Reed, and we were opening for his shows. And if you knew Lou Reed in those days, he didn't actually make it to the stage, so because he'd, you know, due to various things, you know. But we were doing these gigs, and he said to us, "I've got a friend of ours that'll drive you about, you know, while you're here, show you the sights and everything." And up comes this old big FJ, battered up Holden, comes. I mean, I never. Well, if you knew Bon, you just saw this wild weaving all over the road, and this guy pulled up, braked, you know, got out the car and said, "Hi, I'm Bon." You know, he introduced himself and everything. He said, "And I'm going to drive you to the mountain." Well, me and Malcolm knew Bon from seeing him in that band, The Valentines. We had seen him in that. And I think, yeah, and I had seen him once with on TV when he was a drummer, I think. He played drums for Johnny Young in a backing band for him. And we knew him from that. And at the time, the guy we had, you know, who was up the front churning out the vocals, you know, we felt, well, we wanted more rock and roll singer, me and Malcolm. And, you know, we knew Bon could sing, so we asked him, you know, straight away, because one thing we knew, he couldn't drive. So we more or less asked him if he was looking for a gig, you know. And he said at the time, "Oh, let me sort of think about it." And then he came down we had done a few gigs besides this Lou Reed thing and a few club places, and he came down after one of these club shows one night and he said, listen, I've got a little studio set up, you know, at a friend's place, a little basement. He says, why don't you just grab your guitars and we go down. And we got there and he was playing drums, you know. And he wanted to play drums with us, you know, and we said, well, we we can get a good drummer. We knew a good drummer, you know, and we said, you know, we really want someone who can, you know, handle the vocal end. And he said, yeah. And we knew he could sing, and he said, well, okay. He knew we had to go over we were driving across the Nullarbor, and we were going to Perth after that, and it was a bit of a long haul. And at that time, the Nullarbor wasn't even tarred, and then we were going across in the back of a truck, you know. And then on top of that, we had no shock absorbers in the truck, and we were all in the back, no windows, no. You couldn't see out, and yeah. And we were just driving. We were lucky we really got through, because they used to say if you break down there, you may as well just leave it and hope somebody comes along and you can hitch a lift or something. So we got through there, and Bon had said, well, if you make it back, because he knew we had to do that trip. He said, if you make it back, you know, come and look me up and I'll give you my answer. So when we got back to Adelaide, he said, yeah, he wanted to do it. So, and then I think, yeah, straight away, I think after that we went to Sydney, and then he come along with us to Sydney. Bon used to scribble an idea, you know, and he would have a lot of stuff written, you know, but every now and again he needed someone to, you know, he would have a lot of stuff, but he'd need somebody, a bit like, you know, like when you get a tape back and you give it the editor, and you go, you know, piece it together. He needed someone that would sort of look at it and go, yeah, that's a great thing happening there, Bon, you know, and then he would rework it. So we were lucky because you had Malcolm, myself, George, you know, and me being the youngest, I could think of probably, you know, probably corny things, cornier than what they might think, you know. Yeah, because I would sit there's on that TNT song, you know, it was a little poem, you know, that I used to hum, and I'd had that even as a kid in school, you know, just sort of sit, you know, and you'd be sitting in class sort of looking at the teacher and going, oh, this guy gives me the shits, you know. And you'd start thinking little things in your head, you know, what you'd like to do with him, you know. I suppose we were lucky in a little way. There used to be, when we first started doing songs, it was just a little, even smaller than this, you know, there was just a little room at the back, you know, a bit like this type of setup, probably even smaller, and they had like a big piano took up a chunk of the space, which we didn't need, you know, but it was there, and we would put the drums in there. And then we had a little sort of, there was a little square box, you know, and, you know, we'd all sort of crowd in that. And we'd done a lot of the early ones in there, like Long Way to the Top, High Voltage, you know, and I think a lot of the first album. And then off of that was a bigger, slightly bigger room, and then George said, you know, we started to move into there, because George wanted to get more of that live, the thing we were getting on stage, he wanted to get more of that happening. So he figured if we were in a bigger room, you know, we'd get a bit more of the, you know, the live ambience thing. So, you know, we started moving into that, and then from that period on, that's more or less how we recorded, you know. I mean, there was nothing what you would call, you know, studio correct, I suppose, with that room, you know. But it was just a nice live thing going on, you know? Especially for guitars. You know? In hindsight, when just from being everywhere in the world, there was not a lot of music like that, you know. I mean, there was plenty of, I suppose, you know, pop type music, but I don't think there was anything that was a hard, tough sound.